Well, thank you all. It's kind of a night for giving thanks in a lot of ways. I want to call out Laurie Wexel if she's here. She's the boss of this place and an honorary Tuckerite. Thanks for hosting us. And Carlisle's Catering. How about the food? Everything good? I'm going to take just a moment of personal privilege before I get started on my actual remarks, although they're not unrelated. But in case you didn't get to say hello, I want to acknowledge that your First Lady and my wife, Gay, is here. Many of you will know this. It's been, as some of you know, a kind of a trying year for our family. Gay had some really difficult health challenges over the last few months, and I'm relieved to tell you she's on her way to, on the road to full recovery. I will misparaphrase Winnie the Pooh and say she is stronger and braver and smarter than any of us could have thought. Her recovery and her determination both to get well and to get home to Tucker, along with the love and support many of you showed along the way, really truly reminded both of us how grateful we are to call Tucker home. And I will tell you, having her surgeon in a follow-up visit weeks after he had performed life-saving emergency surgery, said to her more than once, you know, you really shouldn't be here. And he didn't mean not in my office. He was talking about how seriously ill she had been. And another who had never met her came at 5 a.m., as they do in the hospital, to do the things they do. He had never met her, but he had just finished reading whatever 400 pages of her medical file, and he said, and I'm quoting him, he said, God saw fit to put oxygen back in your lungs. You need to go figure out why that is and what you're supposed to do about it. And so, yeah, having reflected on those things, it sort of gives you all the motivation you need to sort of reassess your world and the things you're doing and why you do them. And so having done that, I come to you with a great sense of optimism about our future together. Optimism that in the context of history, we really are changing our little corner of the world for the better. Optimism that though sometimes we wish we could change the whole world. Optimism that although sometimes we sort of shake our fists or shake our heads at the state of things around us, the state of our city is strong and stable and on a trajectory, thank you, that we can all be proud of. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about tonight. Shall we talk about Tucker? Go ahead. Here we are. If you're not already familiar, there was once a spectacular and innovative automobile known as the Tucker Torpedo, or the Tucker 48. A uniquely pontoon-shaped auto, as you can see, was briefly manufactured in 1948. It had an engine in the rear, a curved tracking third headlamp, real air conditioning, an array of innovative driver safety features. It even had a new kind of transmission that the inventor called the Tuckermatic, which is definitely a word we need to find a use for. It was unique and brilliant enough that they made a movie about it 40 years later in 1988. But only 51 Tucker 48s ever came off the assembly line. There were varying reasons for that Tucker's demise, including jealousy and aggressive competition and opposition from others in the auto industry and even opposition from the government. On top of that, Mr. Preston Tucker, who was the inventor, seems to have raced toward the future of the Tucker Motor Company without the foundations necessary for long-term sustainable success. You might say Mr. Tucker tried to do everything at once and ended up with nothing. By 1949, he was bankrupt and the Tucker Motor Company was out of business. I will say, in fairness to his genius, if you wanted to buy that Tucker automobile today, it would likely cost you in excess of $3 million. Yeah. Now, let me be careful to say there's no other connection between Tucker the car, no other parallel to the city of Tucker. But maybe some of you have guessed where I'm going with this. At 7.5 years old, the city of Tucker has been built on innovation and energy, but it's also been built with care and patience, for a purpose and for the long haul. We've created a strong foundation that's built to last for 100 years and then some, but we would not have had a place to build or anything to build with but for the work and sacrifice of volunteers and people who simply loved in the place they lived over the course of more than 100 years before we became a city. People like you, people including you. And that's why we wanted to deliver this address to an audience of the people whose efforts and leadership and contributions too numerous to count have and will sustain the city of Tucker well into a day when perhaps one of our granddaughters will be honored at a dinner like this. The council did a great job of referencing some of you. I wish that we could, I'll echo their comments, that I wish you could see what I see. I wish that I could tell everybody here about each one of you, because I too have worked with you in many different capacities over the year. And even when we haven't worked together, I'm well aware of the work that you're doing. I'm hearing about it, and we're grateful because there are so many things that you can do that a city government just doesn't do. The elected officials who you met a little while ago are not technically volunteers, but I can tell you that none of us is in this job for the money. Is that fair? So yeah, we appreciate their services as well. And of course, those of you who are here tonight are not all the people who volunteer and sacrifice for Tucker's success, but you were invited by your organizations to represent many others who can't be here tonight. Room's just not big enough, and then there are so many. So we want to thank you and thank them. We're recording this, and we hope that when they see it perhaps later, and they know that they're among the people who are also making sacrifices to make Tucker a great place to live and work and play and pray, that we appreciate all of those efforts. So you've been hearing me use that phrase for a long time: live, work, play, and pray, and in different ways. It's my way of expressing the elements necessary to a high quality of life, which is really always the overarching goal of the city, is to increase and improve our quality of life all the time. I'm privileged to lead the city in a lot of efforts to establish prosperity and create more desirable outcomes for everyone who lives here. And one of the jobs of a leader, is to define the vision and to cast that vision and invite people into it and support it and keep calling people back to that vision. So tonight I'm going to use those 4 phrases while you look at some lovely pictures of Tucker to sort of frame up things we're doing, things we've done, things we intend to do into the future. So first, we know Tucker's a great place to live, but what is a place? How do you get to be a place? Well, there has to be some there, and many of you know the story. The first there here, in regard to Tucker's history, was Greenville Henderson, who received a grant of a bunch of land back in the very early 1800s as a reward for his outstanding military service to the state of Georgia. That was before there was a Decatur. It was before there was an Atlanta. He made the Tucker area home for himself and his large extended family. There were farms and farmers in the area, and as more people saw its advantages, more people began to make it their home too. It became a place people wanted to live because there was work, there was rail transportation, natural resources, land to own and to farm, and lots of opportunity. 1892, you know this part of the story as well, this place got a railroad depot and a post office, both called Tucker for the first time. It expanded access and opportunity here, and from there we grew through the remainder of the Industrial Revolution, the invention and advent of the automobile, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and all the other upheavals of American history. And all through that time, more and more people were attracted to live in Tucker. The biggest housing boom came after World War II, as DeKalb County kind of came into its own. Largely, an interesting story we can talk about another time. DeKalb County had a single county commissioner at that time, Scott Candler, and he was a visionary and produced and implemented a lot of the things that we enjoy today. But along with some other leaders who wanted to keep improving their hometown, even though it wasn't a city yet, many of you live in homes that they built, either for themselves or as part of their business, even though Tucker wasn't yet a city. The great neighborhoods we know, from Edinburgh Estates to Winding Woods, and man, I could keep naming many. Wellington, Smoke Rise, so many others were built to take advantage of the many opportunities to also work and play and pray here. That's why people wanted to come and live. So our efforts to make and nurture Tucker into a great place to live follows the same formula. We work hard on the other three elements of work, play, and pray in order to continually strengthen the desirability of living here. They go together. Our population has grown by at least 5,000 people since we incorporated 7.5 years ago. And every one of them chose to make Tucker, the city of Tucker, their home. To accommodate our growing future, new neighborhoods are being built at Idlewood Station, the Enclave on La Vista, and at Trinity Park. We're adding a variety of housing for all incomes and needs. All in all, we have nearly 1,000 housing units comprising apartments, townhomes, and single-family detached housing coming online in the very near term. In the next few weeks, we'll release an analysis of all the housing types in and around the city that'll help us determine what we most need to bolster in order to attract new residents who will continue to support our employers, our restaurants and retailers, our green spaces, and our faith community. We'll use that data to design our strategy in planning and zoning and encouraging and nurturing the kinds of housing investments that will have the biggest impact on improving our quality of life. Can we agree that nobody likes to commute? If that's the case, it follows that if we want people to be able to live and work in Tucker, we have to keep constantly improving and add to the other three elements, live and pray and play, that are attractive to employers. The history of industry and employment is a proud one. As the area evolved from primarily agricultural into one centered around commerce, the railroads played a huge role. Those rail lines carried in the goods that people needed and carried out the goods that our industries and farmers produced all the way back to the time of Greenville Henderson's fruit and the beverages he made from local crops. The town that was laid out by the Georgia, Carolina, and Northern Railroad still forms the core of our downtown and is a bright part of our future 130 years later. Today, one of our biggest and most innovative businesses is also in the beverage business. It's walking distance from here. You might have heard that PepsiCo is underway with a $300 million expansion of their plant here, adding hundreds of jobs and turning it into what will be one of their most advanced bottling plants anywhere in their system. We have a building supplies company, Kofer Brothers, whose 100th birthday we celebrated a few years ago, that was literally built on the railroad and stays there to this day. Chip Kofer pointed out to me that the bank on First Avenue that was once called the Bank of Tucker is now called the Bank of America. And we have a new community bank called Tandem, whose name was chosen to reflect the idea of working together. And so, speaking of small business, did you know there are over 1,200 businesses, 1,200 businesses in the city of Tucker with less than 10 employees. And there are at least another 100 with between just 10 and 15 employees. We have one of the most diverse business communities of any city you can find, and it is the backbone of our economy. During the 1960s, some forward-thinking leadership and investors began to build Stone Mountain Industrial Park, where you're sitting. They brought dozens and dozens of manufacturers and distributors to the area, and along with North and South Royal Atlanta that came along a little bit later, the properties now comprising the Tucker Summit Community Improvement District have become one of the most important industrial areas in DeKalb County. As a sidebar, going back to living in Tucker, one of our largest residential communities, Smoke Rise, was envisioned and largely built by a developer named Bill Probst, specifically to provide housing for the people who would come to work in those industries and facilities that were being built as part of the industrial parks. In fact, it's a point of pride for me. My wife and I live in a house built by Bill Probst 45 years ago, and we recently named one of the parks in the Smoke Rise area in his memory. On the west side of Tucker, North Lake Mall was opened to serve the shopping needs of people from all around the region, and business of all kinds grew up around it. We celebrated the mall's 50th birthday this last year. Now, see, I can't see the pictures that are behind me, so feel free to call out or name your friends while they're there. Their 50th anniversary was last year. And speaking of long-lived businesses, there's a business there, many of you will know, that there's a coin and stamp shop for collectors there. That guy opened the same day the mall opened in 1972, and he has been there every day since then. It's a very cool thing that we have that kind of history among us. But as the age of the shopping mall has passed or begun to pass, we're fortunate to have some really smart and bold investors envision a new future for it. Underway right now is a conversion to a multi-use development that already has close to 1,600 employees of Emory Healthcare going to work there every day. It will soon have amenities for them and for all of us, like restaurants, and personal services and entertainment, great retail, along with another new generation of employers. And in that area, in fact, extending all the way from there to our downtown, the Tucker and North Lake Community Improvement District works on beautification and security and all the things that make districts like that more attractive. And as a result of what's happened there, the North Lake office submarket has the highest rate of occupancy in the region and an even brighter future ahead of it. So to carry all this business success into the future, this year, we completed Tucker's first ever economic development strategic plan. This plan was a year-long deep dive into what's now here in the way of industry and business, what's in the future, and it addresses how we'll leverage our strengths and shore up our weaknesses and act on both to be ever more attractive to businesses and business investment. For the first time, we have a plan that provides a roadmap we can follow instead of sort of veering from one thing to the next, whatever is sort of shiny in front of us. And so the time investment should guide us toward making smart financial investments well into the future and keeping our eyes on the road, as it were. Playing in Tucker means different things to different people, but for the operations of the city, it mostly means parks and recreation, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've done in that regard. When we became a city, we acquired about 260 acres in 13 parks that were, can I say, woefully neglected? That's probably kind.
Yes, you're allowed.
It was not that they weren't great spaces, and it certainly wasn't that the friends of the parks weren't doing everything they could, but these parks needed resources, significant reinvestment, and professional attention, along with more programming to keep them active and attractive. As with the city itself, a story for another time, we started from scratch. We replaced the playground equipment in every park and added safer surfaces for the children to play on. We replaced every fence in every park to make them safer and more functional. We got the grass in shape. We trimmed the trees. We installed security cameras and lights and did everything we could to make them more inviting. At the Tucker Recreation Center, we replaced the roof, heating and cooling system, and renovated large parts of the interior. We refined and added programming, including pickleball. It's a thing, y'all. It is a thing. Volleyball, basketball courts, fitness facilities, meeting spaces, solar-powered equipment for public use during emergencies, and we are providing proudly a performance space for the volunteer-run Main Street Theater in the old cafetorium. Now, if you grew up in DeKalb County, you know what a cafetorium is. If you don't, you can ask me about it afterwards. It's a special word we only used here, I think. Elsewhere, we renovated Kofor Pool, Peters Park. We're underway with renovations at Rosenfeld Park and Lord Family Park. We added lighting for tennis and soccer in existing parks, and in the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see all new fields, including artificial turf, state-of-the-art lighting, new concessions, restrooms, locker rooms, parking, and pedestrian access at Fitzgerald. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, yeah, it's a big deal. We're spending a lot of money on it for very good reason. But here's the other important part. We promised to the partners who donated that land to the city that we were going to bring the physical space up to and well past its glory days, which is what we're working on. And we're allowing the leaders of the Tucker Football League there to continue to teach lessons about winning and losing graciously and all the other life skills that come from competitive team sports. Since we started our Parks and Rec department, we've also added over 30 acres in 5 new parks, including Rosenfeld Park, the Church Street Green Space, which is maybe my favorite spot in the whole city, the Fitzgerald Sports Complex that I just mentioned, and our newest signature park for downtown. We're in design phase for that one, which will include an amphitheater, shaded seating to enjoy lunch or a play date, a range of other features for events and for spending your recreational time. You're welcome to enjoy the open space that's there now, but just be aware after the first of the year, will begin construction, and it'll be about a year of construction before it's fully and completely built out. But that's not all. It's not all we offer in the way of play. We've, of course, had our extremely successful Main Street events like Tucker Day, Taste of Tucker, the Cruise-Ins, and many others, all run by volunteers, including many of you. Thank you. Yes. And of course, those things have been going on since before we were a city, but the city itself has added some events that have become a vital part of our community life. Our TKR Summer of Fun includes the annual Independence Day celebration and fireworks show, not on July 4th, July the 3rd, on purpose. Our popular First Friday concert series, which you got to get to if you haven't. Our third Thursday movie nights. Our National Night Out that's coming up in October. And let's not leave out Adult Field Day, a highly competitive day that includes skill events like water balloon tosses and inflatable sumo wrestling competitions. All of this came together following the vision laid out in our first Parks Master Plan about 5 years ago. This year, in fact, sort of kicked off last night, we're conducting our first major update of the Parks Plan so that our parks will continue to grow into a world-class kind of system and be an attraction for people to come and enjoy the other aspects of their lives. So please look for opportunities to participate in developing that plan. I could go on about Parks and Rec all night. In fact, we should probably have, I'm looking at Rick Robertson down there, we should probably have a State of the Parks event some night just to talk about all the things that have been done and are available and the reasons you should be out and enjoying them. Yeah. So the fourth element of our successful future that has to be integrated with the others, pray, is a shorthand way of referencing our faith community. For good reason, this is the element the government has the least direct role in, but which is the most directly vital to our community's spiritual health, sense of purpose, and well-being. It undergirds and makes sense of why we do all the work we do on the other elements. From the time this area was settled through all the other history we've discussed, churches and faith organizations have been a part of the fabric of Tucker. A few years ago, I gave this State of the City report, and I challenged that audience to imagine if somehow, suddenly, the churches and faith-based organizations in Tucker just disappeared. Who would feed the hungry? Who would visit the sick? Who would come alongside you when you've lost a job or a loved one? Who would provide resources to the destitute and lovingly help them get back on their feet? Where else are we reminded of how meaningful life can be, but also that there's so much more to our existence than what we can see and feel and touch every day? Government certainly can't do those things. I've said many times it's people who have the capacity for love. The people who work and serve in government can and do express their love through their work. But government as an institution cannot love its neighbor. It's just not built for that. That's why we're blessed to have multiple Baptist and Methodist and Presbyterian and Pentecostal and Lutheran and Catholic and Mormon and dozens of other denominational and non-denominational churches leading in love. They collectively hold services in a variety of languages. I don't know if you know this: Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Spanish, even Hebrew and Aramaic. Muslim and Buddhist temples and Jewish synagogues help to weave our Tucker tapestry of faith. Our role as a city government and as citizens is to continually acknowledge and recognize the irreplaceable role which our faith community plays and the many needs they fill. We are served and made better by them, individually and as a community, and we want to nurture them and honor them and encourage them on their mission as they do their work. So we've talked about our history and kind of recent and current work in the context of these four pillars of Tucker community life. I want to close out, not quite yet, with some thoughts about the future and how these principles will continue to guide our progress over the next 2.5 years. But let's start here. There we are. If you could afford the $3 million price tag, you could probably find a Tucker 48 of your very own. It would be super cool. You could show it off to your friends, maybe drive it around town and enjoy some of its once-upon-a-time advanced features. Maybe even take it down to the Cruise-In and share it with the motorheads. But its functions would be pretty limited to its day and the very specific things that it was built for. You could never ford a creek in it or drive up a 30-degree incline like you could in a Jeep. You'd do more harm than good if you tried. You couldn't tow your boat to the lake or your trailer to a job site. The Tucker torpedo might have been an engineering wonder, but it wasn't built for those kind of things. It probably couldn't even keep up with traffic on 285. Our city of Tucker was built and is being built with purpose and planning and vision. If we attempt to use it contrary to its purpose, we may do more harm than good. So as we plan and work toward the future, the first and most important thing is to understand what our purpose is, what our capabilities are, and then deploy those capabilities to maximum advantage for our purposes. We'll be at our best when we're doing the things that only we can do, or only we can clearly do better than some other government entity. We'll succeed when we focus relentlessly on the things we are built for, like taking care of common needs for a safe and attractive city, effective transportation, appealing recreational facilities which lead to investment by businesses and families. And we'll be at our best in the future only if we build something that does all the things we need it to do today and is upgradable to address the future and not stuck in time like an antique car. So we'll continue building and improving our roads. We expect to spend in excess of $5 million per year on our roads over the next 6 years. We'll accelerate construction of 32 miles of multi-use trails, which will take tens of millions of dollars, some of which we hope is somebody else's money. We'll make massive stormwater and drainage system improvements citywide, and we'll continue to add to the appeal of our park system to make them one of the big reasons people want to live and work and play and pray here. To accomplish all this, we also need new leadership for Team Tucker. In fact, if I was doing a SWOT analysis, some of you know what that is, and I have, the greatest potential threat on my list would be that we might fail to encourage enough of the thoughtful, level-headed leaders in our community to help keep us on course as elected officials. People who run for the right reasons and with a right understanding of our role and our purpose. I had this thought that I have to share with you. It's not really the purpose of tonight's event, but it makes me think of the story of Catch-22. Y'all, did anybody read Catch-22 in high school? It's a novel about the Cold War, and it's about a group of pilots who are continually sent on these incredibly dangerous missions. The Catch-22 in Catch-22, you may have used the phrase without understanding where it came from. The catch was, the pilots who were eager to go, who thought it was just awesome and exciting, were deemed not fit for duty. So long as you didn't want to go, because you recognized the difficulty and the risk involved, you were deemed sane and qualified and required to keep going on the missions. So I'm sorry to break it to you. But if you're a volunteer who's doing the hard and sometimes thankless work for the right reasons, your next mission may be to serve on the city council. If it seems daunting and hard and scary and thankless, please take my word for it. Understanding that is the first qualification, and I would love to talk to you about it. I'm only half kidding about all that. But whether you ever run for office or not, we know that our volunteer leaders will always be our greatest strength. Your continuing servant leadership and giving back will remain the special additive, if you will, of the fuel that drives our Tucker forward. We are blessed to live in the great state of Georgia and in Metro Atlanta, a large community that's diverse and resilient and full of resources. It's among the most successful and vibrant anywhere, by any definition. Within that larger space, Tucker is special. And it's special because of the people who live and work and play and pray here and who make the sacrifices to enhance our quality of life. As your mayor and on behalf of our whole family, we're continually honored to serve you. And finally, I want to leave you with a sort of a benediction that I hope will inspire and encourage and maybe give you the strength and energy you might need from time to time to continue your good work. This comes from Mother Teresa, who, among other things, was sort of the ultimate volunteer, right? Her name has become synonymous with grace and selflessness. And she wrote this verse. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you're honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and your God. It was never between you and them anyway. May that God bless you and our city of Tucker. Thank you all. Thank you for what you do, and good night.